From Citizen TV, this is the Monday Report with Trevor Ombija.
Yes, that's absolutely right. You're just in time for the Monday Report. Thank you so much for staying with Citizen TV. More than 48 hours after Kenya's candidate to the African Union Commission elections lost the election, questions are still abound. What went wrong? And what next? That's a conversation we're having with Professor Peter Kagwanja. He's a policy advisor and strategist, also an international relations expert. Willis Otieno will be here as the deputy party leader, Safina, and Charles Owino, head of the National Communications Center. What went wrong and what next? That's a conversation we're having. We'd like to hear from you at Trevor Ombija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. But first, our top stories tonight.
And we are at risk of having 58,495 new infections by 2030 if donor funding is reduced.
U.S. funding freeze throws health sector into a crisis, with government seeking 24 billion shillings to bridge the gap.
Let us stop defending ourselves and let us take criticisms and feedback positively.
SHA on staggering mode. Government to allocate more funds and review benefits package as hospitals paint a grim picture.
Wale watu wanakata makaa si wakazi, ni watu ambao wameletwa.
Well-connected cartels inside the illegal charcoal trade in Kajiado on our investigative feature tonight. Justice at last. Man sentenced to 150 years in prison for killing his 3 children. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Njoki Shege. The U.S. funding freeze has thrown the Kenya health sector into a spin, with the source of funds for key programs amounting to nearly 25 billion shillings now at risk. The Ministry of Health says that the freeze has exposed critical services like HIV management, vaccine programs, nutrition and blood donations to disruptions, threatening the lives of thousands of Kenyans. The government is now forced to seek alternative donors to ensure continuity. Brenda Wanga details the government's plans to retain a section of healthcare workforce previously funded by the USA government.
Extent of the impact left in the health sector in Kenya following the freeze of funding by the USA government has today been laid bare by the Ministry of Health.
As we said, for commodities, 24.9 is by US government, 79.8 to Kenya, and 79.8 health commodity need. That is 24.9 out of the 79.8 commodity need.
The recent stoppage of work order by the United States government has exposed our over-reliance on external donor funding for key health programs.
Our objective as government is to make sure that no decision that is made by our development partners affects the quality of healthcare we provide to the people of Kenya. So we are making all necessary contingency decisions and arrangements to ensure there will be no disruption.
Kenya has looked to the USA to run key health projects over the years. Those funds are now no longer a guarantee. Aside from the key HIV and AIDS, malaria and TB interventions, the U.S. funds have also been critical in the provision of human resources for health to the tune of 5.8 billion shillings per year, provision of oxygen, laboratory, cervical cancer and COVID-19 issues for 3.7 billion shillings, the distribution of commodities at 2.2 billion shillings, data systems 139 million shillings, blood and blood products 2.7 billion shillings, family planning services at 598 million shillings, nutrition services at 2.88 billion shillings. At the same time, the government will need to immediately disburse some 2 billion shillings in addition to 2.5 billion shillings for Gavi vaccines to ensure compliance.
Actually coming to 30.922 billion that we require for seamless transition.
About 11,000 healthcare workers who are financed by the US government across the country have been affected, threatening service continuity in both public and private facilities.
The funding freeze is also set to further endanger the lives of Kenyans at risk of infection from HIV/AIDS, as well as an increase in the TB mortality rates in the country.
And we are at risk of having 58,495 new infections by 2030 if donor funding is reduced. For TB, we are likely to have 23,500 TB annual mortalities, among them being 20,000 people living with HIV.
The government's acknowledgement of the adverse impact of the freeze comes as the impact of the same continues to manifest, especially in the non-governmental health sector, with over 150 clinics already shut down and hundreds of healthcare workers rendered jobless. The government, however, says it is also exploring other funding avenues, including engaging other donors as well as allocating more funds sourced locally to ensure that health services are not adversely affected by the USA orders. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Now, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has acknowledged the challenges facing the Social Health Authority, saying that the government is committed to correcting the glitches and ensuring that all Kenyans have access to quality healthcare. His admission comes amid growing concern over the persistent technical failures on the SHA portal and the rising burden of out-of-pocket expenses on patients. Mary Mwoki has the details.
With the new health insurance scheme running into headwinds, Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki organized a health summit at his current residence, bringing together stakeholders from counties and the Ministry of Health. Kindiki seemingly took cognizance of the shortcomings of the new health scheme, highlighted by members of the public.
We need to do a lot of work, especially the efficiency aspects at the two authorities, the Social Health Authority and the Digital Health Authority. And let us take criticisms and feedback positively. If you're doing well, the public will not complain.
Kindiki outlined some of the plans by government to ensure the smooth running of SHA services. The Deputy President announced that the budgetary allocation for health services has been revised upwards and is due for submission to the National Assembly on Tuesday, 18th February. He also revealed that the Ministry of Health is currently reviewing the means testing tool for SHA contributions as a way of addressing concerns raised by Kenyans, and will be unveiling it in the next few days. In response to mounting public outcry, Health Cabinet Secretary Deborah Barasa has announced a review of SHA benefits tariff set to be unveiled on March 1st.
We have established the Benefits Package and Tariffs Advisory Panel, and they will be reviewing the benefits package every 2 years. That is to identify the concerns and critical components that need to be addressed urgently and for them to be implemented.
The meeting taking place as the Rural and Urban Private Hospitals Association of Kenya released a study painting a grim picture of SHA. The study shows that SHA portal continues to face severe functionality issues. The most significant barrier include prolonged system downtime affecting a majority of the facilities. Additionally, OTP delays and an inability to track claim approvals have worsened in the last 1 month.
The SHA portal stability has only gotten worse, not better. Level 2 hospitals countrywide, whether public, private or faith-based, 86% of them, which literally means all of them, have told us that they received no payments. They have received no payments since 1st of December up to date. And these are the hospitals where people are going for outpatient services by law, because we have limited outpatient cover to level 2 and level 3.
There has been delays in implementing capitation for the level 2 and 3 facilities, creating financial instability. Timely capitation payments will provide predictable financing for these facilities and ensure continuity.
Financial strain on healthcare providers remains a pressing issue, with most unable to track their claims due to a lack of settlement monitoring system. SHA's payment settlement rating remains at a concerning 37%, further complicating service delivery. Mary Mwoki, Citizen TV.
Now, away from health matters, Kondio Saikoi, a suspect arrested for allegedly raping a woman in Oloika, Magadi in Kajiado County on February 13th, has denied the rape charges. The court granted Saikoi 500,000 shillings bond before the mention of the case on March 6, 2025. Meanwhile, Gender Principal Secretary Anne Wangombe toured Magadi area, where 7 defilement and rape cases are under investigation, and directed the security officers there to apprehend the perpetrators. Gatete Njoroge has details.
After an operation that led to his arrest on Friday, Nkondio Sakoi appeared before Ngong Senior Principal Magistrate Charles Kutwa. Sakoi was charged with raping a woman on February 13th in Oloika Village, Magadi, Kajiado County, and also faced the charge of committing an indecent act. The accused person, who relied on a translator, denied the 2 counts and was released on 500,000 shillings bond, with the court directing police to conduct an age assessment as the suspect lacked a birth certificate and an identification card. The case will be mentioned on March 6th. Women activists who attended the court session condemned the recent cases of sexual violence against women in the area and called on authorities to act with speed and arrest the situation.
Our major worry as women is that our girls and women are not in peace. People are living in fear at the ground. And the worst thing is that our leaders are nowhere to be seen in such cases. If this thing was affecting cattle or livestock, our men will be in the forefront talking about it.
Ile kitu ningependa kuambia the police, wasilegeze kamba, kwa sababu hawa watu tuko boda uko Tanzania. Hawa watu wanaweza fanya hizi mambo na watoroke waende Tanzania na tutawapata.
Meanwhile, in Magadi, the epicenter of the atrocities against women, Gender Principal Secretary Anne Wangombe landed in the company of women leaders for a forum with residents to seek immediate solution to the crisis. Wangombe directed members of the Nyumba Kumi, Ngao officials and police to work together, arrest the suspects, and ensure women are protected.
As government, this has got to come to a stop. And we are grateful to His Excellency the President, because he has come up with a task force that is supposed to look into these issues. But meantime, together with the security, we are going to ensure that no stone is left unturned until we get the culprits.
Activists who had planned protests to call for action have given police an ultimatum to arrest the suspects. They will rally residents to demand answers.
Tunapatia serikali 72 hours. Huyo mhalifu ambaye amenajisi wa mama zetu na dada zetu hapa Magadi aweze kushikwa, hatia za kisheria ziweze kuchukuliwa. Na tunaomba serikali, hatutaki kuona kesi hata moja ya unajisi hapa Magadi.
The search for the main suspect who raped and defiled 3 women on February 9th is still on. Leaders have called on Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen to deploy GSU recruits in Magadi to join DCI detectives in combing the bushes to arrest the culprit. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV.
So the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers will down their tools from midnight tonight, resuming their suspended strike due to unfulfilled demands. The union has castigated the Council of Governors for what they said is a lackluster attitude in the period the strike was suspended, and the national government for what they said is the apparent discrimination of clinical officers. And as Loro Tieno reports, Kericho County is also facing a looming crisis in the health sector, with doctors threatening to go on strike in the next 2 weeks.
3 weeks after they resumed duty to pave way for negotiations with the Council of Governors and the Ministry of Health, clinical officers will be downing their tools effective midnight. Announcing the strike, KUKO Secretary General George Gibore fingered the Council of Governors for being non-committal, saying that the Council's calls to extend their CBA negotiations by another 21 days lacked goodwill, as it failed to schedule dates for their next meeting.
And of course, we need to tell all the healthcare workers and the Kenyan that we not need to be comfortable in a situation where our resources are misdirected as we continue to desire that we can have a better health care. We continue to see a government that continue to purport to talk about reform, but every time we see them acting, they act in a negative way.
We are in a crisis. A strike that was called, we suspended it for 21 days. Nothing is materializing. It is just blame game. when you ask, you are told imekwama siji kwa ofisi ya Mbadi, mara siji nini imefanya nini. As we are even saying that we are going to look for Raila Odinga.
In Kericho County, a health crisis is also brewing after the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union issued a 14-day strike notice to the county government. The doctors' umbrella body decried the lack of comprehensive medical cover for doctors as well as poor working conditions.
Will not leave our doctors, the small number of them, to get frustrated and get stressed up because of the numbers and the role that the county should do of doing the employment of the doctors.
Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Now, Kajiado County has emerged as a hotspot for illegal charcoal burning, with cartels raking in an estimated 2.6 million shillings per operation. Tonight, Citizen TV can report that high-ranking government officials are involved in the syndicate, facilitating it by turning a blind eye to the illegal activities. Our investigative team went undercover in a conservancy at the Kikesen River near Bisil within Kajiado County, documenting the destruction of indigenous trees, some of which take up to 80 years to grow. We observed the entire process of charcoal burning and tracked the transportation of charcoal along the Namanga-Nairobi road, evading 8 roadblocks before reaching consumers in Nairobi and its environs. Here now is our investigative report, Charcoal Cartels, with Ode Francis.
Our journey took us to the Kikesen River Conservancy, where nearly 300 acres of land have been decimated by illegal charcoal burners. The smoke billowing from a forest is a clear indication of ongoing illegal activities. We counted 24 kilns ready for charcoal, meaning countless trees have already been cut.
Wale watu wanakata makaa si wakazi, ni watu ambao wanaletwa, lakini hata wakiletwa ni wenyewe ndio wanauza makaa, wale landowners ndio wanauza miti ikisimama. Sasa kuna ule mtu anauziwa, alafu huyo ndiye analeta watu sasa wa kukata. So hiyo challenge inatupata sana, manake hata wanyamapori wanakuliwa, wale watu wanakula wanyamapori. Kwa hivyo wanyamapori wanaanza kutoroka.
It's within the same conservancy that we witnessed both wild animals and local Maasai sharing the same grazing land. The terrain is challenging, but our investigation takes us deep into the territory of tree and charcoal cartels. During our visit, we discovered suspects in temporary houses, stocked with food to sustain their illegal operations. When they got wind of our presence, they vanished from the scene.
Hey, ruhusa ya kazi. Tarehe 7 Januari. So, kuna mtu anaitwa Kaka, kuna mtu anaitwa Kelly, kuna mtu anaitwa Jomba, kuna mtu anaitwa Jerry, kuna mtu anaitwa Geoffrey, Wanyonyi, Solomon, Job na Timothy.
Huge tree stumps lay bare in the area. Mayan Lemayan, an environmentalist and resident of Kikesen Conservancy, shares his concerns.
Since these activities started, the health of the locals who live here have been an issue, and also the health of, wildlife around here, livestock around here. I mean, every living thing that is around in this conservancy. So it has been a huge challenge, and also the people who might be conducting this activity, that is cutting down the trees, might also be a threat to the locals, security-wise.
The syndicate involves high-ranking government officials. In our investigations, we found 2 record books detailing dates, food consumption, and payments to the members involved in the charcoal burning. Entries date January 7th, 2025. In the book shows a plan to spend 54,000 shillings on payment to top-ranking officials in Kajiado County.
November 2024. Hii ni ya chakula.
A man named Geoffrey and Job were allocated 12,400 shillings, while county officials, specifically the DC, was allocated 45,000 shillings. Money and the records are linked to the charcoal syndicate. Locals say the activities of the cartels are extensive. Moses Kismir is the chairman of the Kikesen Conservancy.
Vile naona ya administration yote wako ndani. Kwanza machifu unakuta assistant chief hapo wa eneo hiyo, unakuta watu wa Kenya Forest wako ndani. So unakuta hiyo line yote wako ndani. Manaki ingesimamishwa kitambo kama si kitu ambayo watu wa serikali hawako.
The charcoal is ready after successful preparation and meticulously packed in sacks, awaiting transportation. We trailed the charcoal transport route at night to destinations like Isinya, Kitengela, Kiserian, and Nairobi. We discovered the charcoal is transported in a tightly tinted Nissan Matatus and Probox together with motorcycles, operating strictly at night and during the day for those who have been in the business for long. We followed them from the forest 40 kilometers to Bisil Center, where the main charcoal depots are located. Our trail took us to the main depot owners in Bisil, who receive the consignment before they are distributed to other locations. We trailed a van leaving the Bisil depot, passing 8 roadblocks set at night along the Bisil-Isinya road. We documented all 8 roadblocks where officers were seen receiving something from the van. In the morning, we encountered a lorry full of charcoal. 3 men are seen packing the product into sacks. Just meters from the Isinya Way Bridge, manned by police officers. Upon realizing our presence, one officer spoke to the charcoal lorry workers and left to avoid detection. The following day, our whistleblower informs us of a multi-agency team led by County Commissioner, Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Forest Service, Administration Police, local administration and village elders laying an ambush operation at Kikesen Conservancy. A suspect led us to their operation site.
Flemini ya tangu nianze hii kazi, sijawahi kulipwa ati mapatano ya kibarua. Ukisha kata kama ni gunia 50, itakuwa yako 50, itakuwa yako 25 na atajiri 25. Kwa hivyo tukirudi kwa mahesabu juu ananunua chakula, kunisimamia kwa hiyo kazi na maziwa na maji. Hatakuja kukaa chini kama nimekula kama 10,000, tayari mimi nitarudisha 5 kwake. Yeye ana 5, mimi na 5. Kukata makaa mingi nimeshakata gunia 60, 70.
Nikikata kidogo tuseme 50. Na mimi naona tu inanipatia faida kidogo, lakini nisaidie kwa maisha hata sana. Tuseme naweza pata kama 20,000 ama 10 hivi, 15 baada ya miezi kama 4 ama 5 hivi. Hatuwezi lazimisha kukata, ni wao wanapeana ruhusa tukate.
Several suspects including a landowner are arrested.
Lakini si wewe kwa jiko, wewe ni kama kataji. Hata wacha hii kitu hapa. Kuna kazi mali nakata. Twende. Ile mali ni wewe ile nakata.
Wewe ndio mwenyewe shamba.
Kupita kando.
The prepared kins are immediately destroyed.
Huyu mama si mwenye shamba, in short. Kidogo nimekuja, najua interview naelewa. Asijishike kwa kitu ambayo haihusiki. Mwenye shamba haiko. Hata ndio maana nilikuja. Mwenye anakata makaa haiko huku. Kwa hiyo mama anaishi hapa. Kwa hivyo si mwenye huko. Yes, in short.
Mkubwa. Tuende kwa sheria. Juu saa hii tuko mbele ya sheria. Heri tusema sana ukweli. Kwa sababu usifanye hata mimi yani nisahau kuwa kuna watu hapa. Mimi nimeajiriwa kwa hii shamba. Na ile shamba ambaye wewe unasema unadai ati iliuzwa ama ilifanywa nini, hii shamba haijauzwa. Hiyo shamba ndio ile iko mpaka hapo. Hata makaa yake imekatwa iko huko. Hii ni shamba tofauti, ni ya huyu mama, sio ile ambayo iliuzwa.
Oh, sa wale nana haraka sana nanda sa robenya le hamba nanda.
Mama amesema ni mwenyeji wa shamba. Mama yake ni pale.
Yeye ndio mwenye shamba.
Yeye ndio mwenye shamba. Ameconfirm. Amesema ameconfirm ni yeye amempea kazi ya kukata makaa.
Ndugu, sijauliza yeye kama ako na permit. Juu hakuna haja hata tuende maneno mengi. Tunajua tu kawaida kazi ya miti ni kinyume ya sheria. Galao sasa mwananchi anaiba kwa serikali. Anajua tu serikali hataki nini, lakini kulingana na ile shida yenye ilimpata mama, hiyo mambo ya hospitali na mambo ya hiyo kijana vile umeona maalama kwa tumbo ilidungwa na wachambazi, ndio akaniambia unisaidie hii mbili ili nipate kununua hata kuenda kulipa hata madeni.
Hiyo karatasi ndio itawaka mzuri.
Despite ongoing efforts, the fight against illegal charcoal burning faces challenges in court. Francis Mbaka, the Deputy Director of KWS Kajiado County, claims the prosecution has not been cooperative.
What is going on here, there are 24 kilns of charcoal that have been kept here by some cartels. These charcoal cartels, there are so many in Kajiado.
The suspects were taken to court the following day, and Magistrate Court Number 4 sentenced them to 1 month of community service order under CSO. The challenge is that all of them are not locals and could run away, making CSO ineffective.
On 5th of this month, we arrested people who are burning charcoal here. And when we took them now to the police and drafted charges, of course, they were released, because the prosecutor could not charge them in demanded as to produce the owner of the farms. Most of these farms here, they are owned by group ranches and also the conservancies. And we really need the support of the prosecutor.
Our investigation into the illegal charcoal trade reveals a shockingly lucrative operation. During our filming, we documented 24 kilns of charcoal ready prepared on site. Each kiln, after successful preparation, produces 20 sacks of charcoal, which one sack selling for 4,500 shillings. In the market, this means each kiln generates 90,000 shillings.
Na wale watu wanachoma miti, na mimi wanachoma makaa. Their message is tutawashika because we already have the list. Hata ukipotea leo, hautapotea kila mahali. Si mwenye shamba tunajua. Hii mwenye shamba yeye ndiye amepeana miti ikatwe. So is the biggest suspect kwa hii mambo ya mikaa. Because najua amechukua pesa. Akasema mwende mkate mikaa. So mwenye shamba na wale wanafanya biashara ya makaa na wale wanakata wafanyikazi wote wako ndani.
With 24 kilns documented, this translates to 480 sacks of charcoal, which would produce a staggering 2.16 million shillings if successfully transported to Nairobi and its environs. Despite the scale of this illegal operation, court action tells a different story. After arrests are made, suspects are often released on a fine of 12,000 shillings or 15,000 or face a mere 6 weeks of imprisonment.
The only support we require is that from the prosecutor and also, especially also that number 4 court, because we have lost several cases from that court. We need their support, because if they say that we must arrest the landowners, don't arrest the person who is cutting, definitely. And the landowners, some of them are all over the country, they are away from here, some are in Nairobi. It is difficult, no one is around to cut trees.
According to the government, the laws on illegal charcoal burning and tree cutting in
MP, who has been hospitalized for weeks now, breathed his last this evening at the Aga Khan Hospital right here in Nairobi. Njendi, who was serving his 3rd term in the National Assembly, was the vice chairman of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Confirming his demise, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, eulogized the MP as a dedicated and passionate representative who served his constituents with unwavering commitment and integrity. In his condolence message, President William Ruto also remembered the legislator for his selfless service to humanity. Well, our condolences goes out to the family and friends. Now, a 40-year-old man has been sentenced to 150 years in prison after he was found guilty of killing his 3 children in 2019 in the Lelatich area in Bomet County. Bomet High Court Judge Julius Kipkosgei handed Bernard Kipkemoi Kirui 3 consecutive 50-year sentences, terming the crime inhuman and shocking, saying the sentence was meant to serve as a deterrent to similar offences. Kipkemoi Kirui was found guilty of murdering his 3 sons. Amos Kipketich was only 12, Vincent Kiprotich was only 8, and Emmanuel Kiprono 5 years old, while their mother was away from home. Sharon Cherono, the mother of the deceased children, has welcomed the judgment, saying justice has been served.
Kotini nimeshukuru sana hayo maneno ya Aiman.
Now, Raila Odinga's loss in the race for the African Union Commission chairmanship shifts focus to his next political steps back home. As analysts weigh his potential moves, one of the most pressing questions is whether the political camaraderie between him and President William Ruto has reached its expiry point. Close associates of Odinga argue that he is a master of political reincarnation, capable of reinventing himself even in the face of adversity. Some leaders, such as former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, have also signaled an openness to closer ties with Odinga. So what are Raila Odinga's options moving forward? Melito Letenges interrogates.
While his bid for the AUC chairmanship position has ended, questions are now being raised about Odinga's next political move at home. Critics argue that it might be time for him to retire, but his supporters insist that he still holds the power to be the kingmaker in the 2027 elections.
Of course, it is not anticipated, not even in the slightest imagination, that the broad-based government is going to collapse forthwith because Raila Odinga has lost the contest at African Union Commission chairmanship contest. It is also obvious that it is highly likely that the 4 ODM cabinet secretaries will be most unwilling to vacate their positions merely because Raila Odinga desires so now that he has lost the contest in Addis.
Political allies close to Odinga have consistently maintained that he has a remarkable ability to reinvent himself and create new political narratives even after facing setbacks. The current political conversation is divided. Some argue that Odinga should run for president in 2027, while others believe he should align with President William Ruto to form a powerful alliance.
President William Ruto must and is going to keep a very short leash on Raila Odinga. That short leash is going to be a costly leash, especially by the exchequer. And in terms of political strategy, Raila has to be maintained politically. Raila has to be kept nearly in the warmest corner of the kitchen for purposes of his peace of mind, but also the government's peace of mind.
Odinga's future relationship with Ruto is increasingly uncertain, particularly with the ongoing disputes in Parliament over the majority party status between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. The Speaker of the National Assembly's firm stance adds further tension to the situation, and analysts say it could come back to bite him.
What does Raila Odinga want then? Does he want a political bat that is neither a bird or an animal in the form of ODM, as it is right now? Or is he going to give it direction? What is good for him? When I talk about Raila Odinga and ODM getting into a coalition with Kenya Kwanza, it is going to be a strategic coalition kind of framework that will not be rushed just yet.
If Odinga chooses to back President Ruto, analysts suggest he would likely negotiate for key positions for his allies in a broader, more inclusive government. Ruto has already shown goodwill by appointing Odinga's supporters to various government roles. However, this approach is not acceptable to a section of ODM leaders, leading to internal divisions.
And these people who are running very fast to join the government, we had elections recently in 2022. Do you think these people were genuine with Baba? Do you think these people really wanted to deliver the presidency to Baba? Why are they running so fast? This is the right time that Baba should know those who are loyal to him and those who are not loyal to him. Because those who are not loyal to him will run so fast and join the government. Those who are loyal to him will be back, will stand back and wait for the instructions.
While Odinga's political bastion in Nyanza has shown signs of warming to Ruto's visits and the possibility of shifting allegiance to his government, closer ties with Ruto is not guaranteed, as ODM party leaders have openly expressed the party's ambition.
We're not escorting anybody. We can't get in between the term of Kenya Kwanza. We go around, we say we are escorting them to win the election in 2027. Our business is to get that power. Be it Baba is going to be the AU chairman or is not, ODM, we must capture power.
Odinga's position within his own party is being tested, especially as new dynamics evolve in his relationship with Ruto. Meanwhile, political figures like Rigathi Gachagua have hinted at a charm offensive towards Odinga.
Rigathi Gachagua and Raila Odinga are going to be consequential political leaders in the run-up to 2027. Rigathi Gachagua is keen to ensure that the Kikuyu vote does not gravitate towards William Ruto. Fact. But for President William Ruto, and why it's necessary for him to have Raila Odinga on the short leash, is that without Raila Odinga, on the side of President William Ruto, and the Kikuyu vote having gone, then I think the chances of success for re-election may be forestalled.
Regardless of whether Odinga decides to maintain his current political standing, one thing is clear. He will be a pivotal figure in the 2027 political succession, and his influence will continue to shape the country's political landscape. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
All right, on that note, let's get some quick reactions from my guest already in studio, Professor Peter Kagwanja, Policy Advisor and Strategies and International Relations Expert, Willis Atieno, Deputy Party Leader, Safina, and Charles Owino, Head of the National Communications Center. Gentlemen, thank you for making time. Prof, I'll start with you for quick reactions on this. What went wrong in the AUC, especially when you start with the candidate, Raila Odinga? He was touted as the man, former experience as a former Prime Minister, former AU representative for infrastructure. What is it that the heads of state did not like about Raila Odinga?
Now, you're asking a question like what went wrong is what happened in Addis Ababa. What happened in Addis Ababa was the result of mistakes that were made maybe months before. When the seat of the chair of African Union Commission was ring-fenced for East Africa, the heads of state who did that in 2024 had in mind two leaders, and they thought the East Africans would come to their sober mind and decide on one of the two. And the two had immense experience to deal with the humongous problems that Africa has been facing. One is Jakaya Kikwete of Tanzania and his experience. The other one was Uhuru Kenyatta, who was retiring. Both had distinguished themselves as serious mediators and managers of the economies. And in the 21st century, the whole agenda of Africa is economic transformation and political stability.
Yeah.
And the two had that. Obviously, Kenya played a local card about 2027 succession. And therefore, we presented a very respected man, a very honorable man, with a huge legacy as one of the makers of 20th and 21st century Kenya.
Yeah.
Then you go to parade him a job for a 50-year-old. 50-year-old is what you are going to give for an eminent elderly leader. And this, you know for sure, is a job of, honorably speaking, of a note-taker for heads of states. He's not a peer. It's not about peerage. And then when you look at the line of the predecessors of who Raila Odinga would have succeeded, it is Alpha Konare, 58, Jan Ping, who was, I think, 61 or thereabout, his successor, Dlamini Zuma, who was, again, in the early 60s, and we had, Musa Faki, who is in his 50s. And the one who has just been elected is 59.
Yeah.
So when we say you are presenting the right man for the wrong job, this was Kenya's mistake. And I hope that we have learned a lesson. that we go for the ablest and the best for a job, because you can give somebody a job and mess him up. Now, we as Kenyans, we have lost an opportunity as a people. If you want to speak in monetary terms, we have already lost $186,000 per year, which is about 2.4 million per year, if we had given it to the right person. That's an income for the country, those who like thinking economics.
Okay. So you think we presented the wrong candidate?
Well, not the wrong candidate. Raila was not the wrong candidate, but that was the wrong position for him.
Okay, wrong position. Willis, what went wrong in Addis?
In my view, let's be very brutal and honest to the people of Kenya. What went wrong? In terms of stature, in terms of standing, in terms of Pan-Africanism ideals, I think Raila was the best. But what went wrong? We lost this election the moment we lost SADC. And we lost SADC purely because Kenya state had taken a position in the DRC that was contrary to the SADC position. What position did Kenya take? Kenya state hosted some of the rebels in the Republic of Congo here in Nairobi to launch a rebel movement to remove the democratically elected president in the Congo. And on the day when the vote was being taken, that rebel group had taken over Bukavu airport. What was top of the mind of the African presidents who are voting? That Kenya is seen as a complicit participant in the conflict in the DRC. And the moment the vote was being cast without SADC and Kenya being seen as a hostile country, there was no way Raila Odinga, despite having the best credentials, could win it. And I say this, we must be very brutal and honest to the people of Kenya. We lost this election because of diplomatic gaffes by William Ruto. The person who must take ultimate political responsibility for the failure of the Kenyan state. I'm not even saying Raila Odinga. Raila did not lose, Kenya lost. It is William Ruto because of international posturing. Look at the summit that was held in Ukraine, in Italy, over the Ukraine issue. And William Ruto goes to Ukraine and takes a very strong stance against Russia. Unnecessarily. What has the fight between Ukraine and Russia got to do with Kenya? What is our national interest in that fight? William Ruto, the first thing he did, the first tweet he did as a president was a tweet to wade into the issue of Western Sahrawi and Morocco. And in both these occasions, we had African Union positions. Why not just align yourself with the AU position? The same person decides to take a position in regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, trying to blame the Palestinians when the AU had taken a position on this particular issue. So we must say this. What went wrong is William Ruto failed the people of Kenya in terms of his diplomatic maneuvers and his personal interests. Because I cannot see the national interest in Western Sahrawi for Kenya. I cannot see the national interest for the people of Kenya in the fight in DRC. I cannot see the national interest that he was pursuing when he went to Italy and spoke about the Ukraine-Russia issue. It can only mean that his personal interests have now superseded national interests. And the Kenyan people and any Kenyan candidate will face the wrath of the rest of the continent anytime they offer themselves for these positions. But let me say this. The votes that Raila got, in my view, were largely votes that he got out of the sheer character and strength of the individual. Otherwise, the rest of the continent was against Kenya.
All right. Owino, what went wrong in your view?
Before I start with what went wrong, I need to counter a little bit of what Mwalimu Professor has said on issues that this position was ring-fenced for Uhuru Kenyatta and Jakaya Kikwete, and that this position was too small for Raila. I think Raila had gone for even a smaller position before as chair of infrastructure. It was much smaller than this current position. But to another extent, I agree, Raila is bigger than AU to a larger extent. That one I agree. But saying that this position was too small and yet the previous government had proposed him for a much smaller position, I don't agree. Equally, we may not need to holistically blame President William Ruto on this failure. I think there is a general problem that Africa may be having with Kenya, because even in Amina's position, you remember we went 6 rounds and she won 8. She won most of them, I think, up to the 6th round. She won. And we still lost. I think African Union, the rest of Africans who are majorly not Muslims, not Arabs, not Anglophone, need to rethink on how to manage their affairs in African Union. If you go to our countries in the northern Africa, you go to those countries on the north, almost all of them, the Arab countries, you find they more play the politics of Middle East. It's just like in East Africa, we have Tanzania, both in SADC and in East African Community because of their previous record. So even the countries on the north, they see themselves more of Middle East and so on. So if you look at the candidate from Djibouti, he had the sympathies of the Arabs, he had the sympathies of the Muslims, and he had the sympathies of the Anglophone. We cannot also equally just say that the problem in DRC did not affect us. It is true. It affected us to a large extent because you remember we just lost 14 South African soldiers in that conflict in Eastern Congo. And actually, up to yesterday, I think they were still carrying out the funerals. So basically, I don't think it's a Kenyan problem. It's generally a problem that surrounds our politics with majority of, because remember, almost seven Anglophone speaking countries did not even vote. I think we could even have lost it in the first round. Most of these countries that have been taken up by military did not vote. So I think what has majorly gone wrong is that there is a general thinking. Because when the lady from South Africa, Mrs. Zuma, took over, she took over from a very weak chairman. And it played well for them at that particular time because generally also SADC, there are about 16. And usually they vote. And if you look at the way that the vote was taken, the gentleman from Madagascar got 10. Raila got 20, and the guy from Djibouti got 18. Then the other guy came down to 7. Then Raila went to 22, and this guy went to 20. Then when this guy came back to 5 first. Then this gentleman went, Djibouti guy went to 23. Raila came back to 20. And this guy remained with 5. And then when we went to the next vote, now he shot to 26. We went to 22. And it almost became a stalemate. So we were either going to postpone the election, carry it forward, or Raila to concede defeat. But you see, it's a very expensive, affair. So he withdrew. But basically, there are several interests. You know, locally, we also have local interests. I think President William Ruto knows Raila's strength in the local politics. And therefore, he had to ensure that Raila was on his side, and he had to get something for him to do.
We'll come to that in just a bit. Gentlemen, stay with me. Let's talk about the DRC that we're talking about right now. A fresh round of fighting has erupted in the South Kivu province of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo after the M23 rebels entered Bukavu. The invasion, which has led to another prison break with over 2,500 inmates at large, is seemingly spiraling out of control despite calls for a ceasefire. Emmanuel To has the details.
Sounds of gunshot again. It is back to combat in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo as the M23 rebels engage the Congolese army in a fierce battle to take over the capital of the South Kivu province on Sunday. Videos posted on social media showing rebels who reportedly overpowered the DRC military forces patrolling the city they had announced to have captured. More videos also showed residents of the city cheering on the M23 as they marched into the city center. Some even seen taking selfies with the soldiers. M23's entry has, however, led to a humanitarian crisis after they took over control of the city airport located in Kavumu town, momentarily disrupting the logistical network to and from the region. The invasion also saw some prison breaks, as over 2,500 inmates were reported to be on the loose, raping women and minors in their way.
Bajene vraiment benzangu kama mnanisikia mwache vile vya kupie mabutike mashope za bag.
This as the African Union called for the disarmament of the militia, which is taking control of more territories in the eastern region of DRC.
We reiterated the need for caution and the need for M23 and its supporters to disarm and withdraw from the Goma airport.
The calls by the UN for the silencing of the guns seemingly ignored.
And the fighting that is raging in South Kivu as a result of the continuation of the M23 offensive threatens to push the entire region over the precipice.
The new spate of attacks come days after two major economic blocs in the region, the East African Community and the South African Development Community's push to broker a truce also failing to yield much. The two blocs, which met in Dar es Salaam a week ago in a crisis meeting, set out some of the steps to bring peace to the region.
That only a comprehensive diplomatic approach, one that addresses the root causes of the crisis, secures the historical integrity and territorial integrity of DRC.
The United Nations has so far reported over 4,000 deaths in the DRC since the war began last month, with prospects for more loss of life if the situation is not arrested. Before their downward march, M23 had taken control of the northern town of Goma in North Kivu province and are now threatening to advance into the capital, Kinshasa. Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Before we delve deeper into that conversation, let's stay back home. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has arrested Japheth Ouko Mayore, the principal prosecution counsel in charge of ODPP in Kilgoris, on allegations of soliciting 50,000 shillings bribe from a businessman in exchange for fast-tracking a court case. It is alleged that the complainant refused to pay the bribe after it was negotiated down to 40,000 shillings, and instead he reported the matter to the EACC. The commission conducted an operation that led to the arrest of the suspect on Sunday while receiving 20,000 shillings as part of the bribe. He was held at the Kisii police station and later released on a 30,000 shillings cash bail pending the finalization of the investigation. Subsequently, the Director of Public Prosecution has sent the officer on compulsory leave. All right, welcome back to some business news. Now, the country's electricity consumption has hit another record high just days after reaching a new peak in January. The peak now stands at 2,316 megawatts against an availability capacity of 2,320 megawatts. Data from the Kenya Powers and National Control Center shows that peak electricity demand has been steadily growing over the last 3 years, with the growth rate gaining momentum in 2024. Here's our reporter Jasmine Wamboi with the details.
Kenyans just last Wednesday consumed the highest amount of electricity that they ever have, reaching a peak of 2,316 megawatts. The available capacity at the moment stands at just 2,320 megawatts.
This is really to debunk the myth that at times so many Kenyans have been sold to, that there is too much power, excess power in Kenya.
According to data from Kenya Power's National Control Center, the country is operating on a marginal spinning reserve well below the recommended 15%.
You can never operate a grid at a level where what we call the reserve margin is almost not there. It can never happen. That is a very high risk that the grid is exposed to.
In the last 6 months, the demand for electricity has jumped by over 116 megawatts. So just what is driving this high consumption of electricity in the country?
The demand for power has basically gone up because of 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, we have increased connectivity in terms of last mile. In the last 6 months alone, we have metered 198,000 customers. Number two, we have completed some transmission lines and some substations. For example, Kimuka substation, Sultan Hamoud Oloitoktok line, Awendo Isbania line, and so therefore those have also increased power demand, and more substations have been done by KPLC, improving the network.
The rise in demand is expected to persist into the future as more customers are connected into the grid. The government is now hoping that Parliament will lift the moratorium on new power generation contracts to increase electricity generation as consumption rises.
The lead times that you would have in terms of when say a power plant is being installed or being constructed is almost 2 years. So the challenges of not lifting the moratorium now is going to be most felt, not right now, but possibly in a year or 2 years' time.
But if the situation persists of moratorium and the lack of increasing generation, then a point is going to reach in this country where we have to bring more thermal generation because they are easy to install within a short period of time.
But in the meantime, the government is working on a number of short-term strategies.
We should be able to fast-track the battery energy storage, 100 megawatts by KenGen. That is going to help us mitigate the shortfall. We also anticipate to accelerate the completion of 70 megawatts from Menengai, and also Olkaria 1 operating, and then increase demand, supply from Ethiopia side with another additional 200 megawatts to meet the growing demand.
Jasmine Wambui, Citizen TV.
Now, Miraa farmers have received a significant boost following a government review of Miraa prices across different categories. The Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, through the Agriculture and Food Authority, that's FAA, has announced new Miraa prices aimed at improving farmers' earnings and stabilizing the industry. However, as Dennis Otieno reports, Miraa farmers are calling for additional measures to address other industry challenges.
The revised prices announced over the weekend were determined by the Miraa Pricing Formula Committee. Following the review, the price of a kilogram of grade 1 cut has increased from 700 shillings to 1,300 shillings. Grade 2 Miraa will now fetch 700 shillings per kilogram, up from 350 shillings, while the Alele category has risen from 500 shillings to 1,000 shillings per kilogram. The new prices take effect immediately and are expected to provide much-needed relief to Miraa farmers, many of whom have been struggling with fluctuating market rates.
For the first time, tumepata hiyo pricing ya Miraa. So hapo tunashukuru na tuseme ni asante.
The committee, operating under the Crops Miraa Regulations 2023, based its decision on production data, cost structures, and supply and demand dynamics within the industry.
Waangalie wale watu wamepea vibali ama leseni ya kufanya biashara ya miraa, waangalie upya kama ni kurivoke zile siko kwa sahi wa revoke, waweke watu tena wafanywe vetting, ndio wale watu wanapewa wao ni watu wanajulikana, si kupea mtu tu.
Ndio tujue wale ambao tunauzia miraa ni akina nani, na the process ya kupatiwa license pia iwe ni halali, ndio watu wetu waweze kupatiwa license wengi. Hiyo sheria ya kupeana isiwe ngumu sana, ndio kwa kuna wale watu ambao ati wakikuja kwa sababu kuna binafsi wao wanapewa hiyo license.
Additionally, farmers are calling for greater market access, particularly in export destinations. Miraa farmers remain hopeful that with improved prices and expanded market access, the industry will experience significant growth, benefiting thousands of livelihoods dependent on the crop. Dennis Otieno, Citizen TV.
Two cruise ships docked at the port of Mombasa on Monday morning. Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director Captain William Ruto says that the vessels MS World Odyssey and MS Europa carrying over 1,600 tourists are a major boost to the tourism sector. Speaking while receiving the tourist, stakeholders say that the tourists will visit Kenya's attractive destinations including the sandy beaches and Tsavo National Park. Kenya Tourism Board and KPA say that they have embarked on plans to market Mombasa as key destination to the cruise business.
Hello, can we have a wine?